Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds, fish nerds, fish nerds, it's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, the show about fish, fishing, and eating fish that is always entertaining, usually funny, and mostly true. Taking over as the main host tonight is me, crappie hippie John King, your tree-hugging redneck from eastern Kansas and co-founder of Glasswater Angling. And I am excited to have in the co-host chair tonight the flatland fly fisher, our own fish nerd librarian, Jeff Donaldson. How's it going, Jeff?
Good. How's it going, John?
Oh, it's going all right. I am just a little behind. I'm a little behind on things. And so is Clay. Clay's going through some life change stuff. And when he comes back, he'll be able to explain that to y'all, all you the listeners and you and me and everybody else. But he's got a lot going on. So I reached out to you, and here you've come to save the day and help me out with this. And I sure appreciate it.
Here I am.
Here he is. But one of the reasons we're a little off our usual schedule is I went down to the Texoma region of Texas with Kathy because she had sold a bunch of antiques. My wife is a professional picker. She buys and sells antiques, and she went down there because she had a couple customers in that Texoma area in North Texas that had bought so much stuff it was going to cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars to ship it to them. So we just decided to load up the car and drive on down there and kind of have a mini vacation. And these ladies are two of our favorite customers. They're friends on Instagram, and once we met them in person, we were even closer friends thereafter. So that's one reason. And then the other is because you and I went off like such a couple of fanboys when we interviewed Aaron and Michael.
Yes.
Of the Femboy YouTube channel, which we are huge fans of Aaron's, and we're also fans of his brother Michael. They're both crazy active fly fishers. Michael has an Instagram feed called Siren String and Stream that is definitely worth a look if you fly fish and are interested in what goes on fly fishing wise in the Ozarks. But Jeff and I, there is so much gush, Jeff, on that.
It is crazy.
We went pretty crazy, and it was over an hour, and it's quite the haystack. And I only got about 2/3 of it done before I gave out. So I'm going to take my time and finish that up as I can. But we've got a great show tonight. What we've got for y'all tonight is a book review of fishing in the Austin, Texas area, as well as the Edwards Plateau area, which is just north of Austin. We have got some fun fish in the news stories for you, including a Texas man and a Florida man story. Sort of, kind of a Florida boy story. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about those incidents that came in the news this week. Thank you, Tim Tacklebox Bete. Then we're going to move on to a couple of snippets from our good friend Luke Chamings from down in South Australia. These are segments that got cut from my interview with Luke back in February, but there was such tasty material I did not delete it. I just saved it for another time, and lo and behold, here we go with that. And then we're going to find out who won the Father's Day Fishing Story Contest. And my own dog, the amazing Rocky Joe, is going to help us out. But before we get going, Jeff and I are going to continue to have a little banter and catch up with one another. So bear with us, and then we'll get on with the show. I got a question for you, man. I just got a big, huge order from Maine Audubon, including 20 dozen jigs. And does tying flies and jigs ever hurt your hands?
Yes, it does. If I spend too much time, yeah, and especially stuff where I'm having to really crank on it, like if I'm doing any deer hair, like spinning or stuff where I'm really having to crank on it, yeah, it does make my hands hurt. Unfortunately, yes, it's like that is a thing, and I mean sometimes fishing makes my hands hurt too. But yeah, I'm willing to go through the pain.
Well, same here, but it is about the cranking. It really is, because of course, when you tie crappie jigs, you really want to pull down on that, those first wraps as you're putting in the tail, so that the whole shebang doesn't, once you get the chenille on, one of the worst things that can happen to a tire is to have the whole body just spin on you. So if you don't really pull down
Right.
and get that nice and tight right off, you wasted all your time and materials tying a jig that you're probably not going to be real happy with. But I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't alone in this. And I have one of those little squeezy sponge fidget toys on my desk, and I do a couple other things to help. But I tie more than 3 dozen jigs. I start feeling it pretty good.
That's a lot. A typical session for me is maybe about a dozen or something.
Well,
if I have the time. I mean, a lot of times I'm sitting down and knocking out, like, I try to tie, like, if I'm gonna tie something, I tie like 6 of it. If, like, okay, I'm gonna tie like a bunch of hare's ears in various different sizes. I'm gonna tie like 6 of each size, right? That way I've got enough to. I'm one of those guys that's like 2 is 1, 1 is none, and all that. And so for me, it's like, and 6 is just barely enough. Because what if that's the one that the fish are biting on, and
right.
then you lose your last one?
Right.
So,
right. You put that last one right in the tree, and you're just like,
right.
oh no.
Exactly it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited that Laura hit me with a big order from Maine Audubon Society, biggest one yet. And she is wanting to come back on the show. And of course, I told her we all love Laura Williams from the Maine Audubon Society. She is a wildlife biologist, but she loves fishing, and she is a big advocate for lead-free fishing. And she is the lead on the Maine Audubon lead-free fishing education program. So we've become fast friends, and it is pretty cool, but it is going to mean I got to tie me a whole pile of jigs. Hey, man, the weather is broke, and we've gotten one of those rare July cold fronts coming in. But before, a few days ago, 110-degree heat index made me think of something, man. Made me think of going fishing for something. How about you?
Yeah, the gar.
The gars
for sure.
Yeah.
And I was actually down at Lake the Ozarks over the weekend, and I had carp fever, but unfortunately I couldn't really. Water was a little high and murky, and kind of the little spots that I have where it's like little flats in the back of a couple coves that I can get to from my new fancy paddleboard, was just murky enough. I had a hard time, and I couldn't get a good presentation to them because I just couldn't see them well enough. Water was a little too deep and a little too off color, and it just made it really hard. But yeah, I mean, same thing. It's like carp and gar. It's like when it gets hot, they're like, great, I love it.
That's right. They're one thing you can go out and chase. And boy, when I was sitting here boiling, wondering when this crazy heat dome's going to move off us, all I could think about is getting back to the river and doing a little of that gar fishing.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
Unless you've got something else you want to talk about, how about we move on to this book we read?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Fly Fishing Austin and Central Texas by Aaron Reed. It is by Imbrifex Books. And I really enjoyed this book, but I'm going to let you take the lead on this because your notes are really good. And tell the listeners about Aaron Reed's book on fly fishing, Austin and Central Texas, because these alternate destinations for fly fishing, whether it's the Edwards Plateau in Central Texas or the Driftless in Wisconsin or the Ozarks, places like that are starting to really heat up. People are really getting interested in some of these alternative fly fishing venues. Tell us about Aaron's book.
Well, as a librarian, I see lots of books come through my hands, right? And, this is a fairly niche type book, right? There's not going to be a giant audience for this. Even we would love to think that, thousands and thousands and thousands of people want to buy our books about, if you and I were to write a book, we would think, oh, thousands of people are going to run out and buy this, but probably not. And so, this is a small press, kind of a niche publication. And for that, it is incredibly high production quality. I see a lot of these kind of books come through and they're just kind of cheap in terms of their construction, the materials used to make the book, the print, the paper, the quality of the photography. This thing is super professionally well done. I mean, it is, in terms of just the physical properties of the book, I guess, right, as a librarian. Like this is a super high quality book. This is going to last you. This is not going to fall apart from you shoving it back in and out of your backpack, right? Or wherever.
Right.
This thing is like going to last. It is like heavy duty. The binding is really nice. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about the like production quality of it. It is so well done.
If I might cut in here, what I see it as a reference book, and I see it as, hey, I'm traveling down to the Austin area of Texas. I want to do a little fly fishing. I don't want to hire a guide at $300 a day. You can have this book in the car. Aaron gives you GPS coordinates of where to get started, and you can just kind of take it from there. But the point is, it may be under your truck seat. It may be in the glove box. It may be in the junk holder. But yeah, it's going to stay together, and you're going to be able to leaf through it and put a lot of bookmarks in it and do what you need to do with it. And it is a pleasure to look at. Even if you don't read it, it's a pleasure just to leaf through.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a good writer. He's a good writer. I mean, I'll give him that too. He's not hacky, which a lot of us can be when we write about fishing and stuff. A lot of times I'm just going to call it hacky. And you know what I mean by that? He's not just kind of trotting out the same old things that everybody says all the time.
Right.
And his photography, his photographs are very well done too. Like he's a very good photographer, or whoever else he had. I would have to go back and look again at but I think he did most of the photography for it. And yeah, it's really, the photography is really good. I mean, it's really, really, really well done. I can't say enough good things about this. This is like, I hope that they can make enough money off these things.
Yeah, I really do too.
Keep this press going, because this Imbrifex Books, because these are some really quality books. I mean, this is the kind of thing that you buy it, you're gonna have it forever. It's not gonna fall apart on you, and it's also very well done.
Your notes are similar to mine in a lot of ways. Like, I like this point right here. Focus is on warm water species. Yeah, there is some trout fishing. This is about as far south as you can get and have some good trout fishing, but that's not the focus of the book. Who is the star of this book?
The warm water species. Yeah,
it is the warm water species. One in particular known as the Guadalupe bass, because this is the only place in the round blue-green world that you can catch those suckers.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting how these various bass species have sort of filled the trout niche in waters that are too warm for trout. Right. So you see this all across the South of these various Micropterus species that have kind of taken over that role of, stream fish, primarily a bug eater, but, will eat bait fish and stuff. And yeah, it's really interesting to have that kind of be the main focus rather than trout. I mean, Lord knows I love trout, but they get all the love, and sometimes it's like, hey, let's let some other fish get some love,
Right. And he does. He spreads it around, baby, because he really likes long-ear sunfish and bluegills and
Rio Grande cichlid, which is another really cool fish that you're only going to find around there.
Rio Grande cichlid, yes, and of course carp and drum. He is big fans.
Yeah, definitely love that emphasis on, let's go out and catch some warm water fish, and these are absolutely as worthy of your attention as anything else, right? I mean, it's like, if anybody who's ever tried to fly fish for carp, I will tell you, it is a challenge. It is, you can go spend a whole bunch of money to fly down to Belize and go try to catch a bonefish. They're not going to be any more challenging than the carp, half a mile from your house. So, yeah. So I really love this emphasis on the warm water species and enjoying them for what they are, and not just as like, this is a substitute for when you can't go trout fishing, right? It is, no, these are the stars of the show.
They are the stars of the show. And if you're, into this at all, this is one great place to go pursue them, because the streams are pretty. They're that same kind of geologic formation like the Ozarks. It's called karst, I think. A limestone streams and so forth. Also, you and I like the fact that, along with some GPS coordinates to get you to a good parking lot or a good starting point on these streams, he also has some GP coordinates for some eats and drinks, So
Eats and drinks.
Yep. Some little craft breweries, some neat little cafes and stuff where you can get a brew and a hamburger after you're done fishing. And and then some I don't know what they're not footnotes, or like side notes where he has quotes from other fly fishers, including the king himself, John Gierach, and also some song recommendations.
Yeah, I love that there's some song recommendations in there. It gives you song recommendations. That's really a good little hook in there. It's really that again that makes it different from the kind of just the very typical kind of, I don't know what you call it, but sometimes it just gets too deep in the weeds about the fish, and kind of forgets everything else. And
right. And I'll tell you, this is for both beginners and experts in that if you haven't fished down here before, but like I say, you want to just go in and learn it yourself without having to hire somebody, this is a book that'll get you there. But the beginner stuff, he's about what weight fly rods he likes to use, what weight lines he likes to use, what flies he likes to get, where you can buy them flies if you don't tie, and so on and so forth. So that is very, very awesome. But I want to move on to, we can't, we're going to, we like this book, but we've got some criticisms, and you had a very germane one. Go with it.
So my one criticism of this book, and this is one of those your mileage may vary type things for other people, is that I find it hyper specific in its geographic information. So, I mean, it really goes, to me, I kind of made the joke to you the other day. It's like, okay, walk 347 feet upstream, look left, there's a tree, cast to the second rock from the left to the tree on the downstream side, twitch it twice, and you'll catch my old friend Bete, the largemouth bass. I mean, it's super specific. I mean, super specific. And that's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not. I mean, he really does like break it down.
He does.
At an almost atomic level, And to me, that kind of, I mean, I want to know, like, this stretch of water here is not productive, so don't waste your time on it, right? It's like, this is all too shallow through here. Don't waste your time on it. But his is like, just breaks it down into such granular detail that I suppose if you were just coming in from out of town and you did not know exactly where you were going to go, and you wanted to go exactly to a spot to do a certain kind of thing, it would be great. That's my only real concern is that it goes beyond what people jokingly call spot burn, right?
Yes.
They're like, this is spot burn. I'm like, there's hardly any spot burns anymore in this day and age. But this goes beyond that into, like I said, that kind of like cast downstream of the second rock from the left of the tree and twitch it 3 times. And,
exactly.
And, and some people may want that level of information. I don't.
Well, I'll tell you,
I don't either. I'm the kind of guy that likes to explore.
And that's just it. To me, I think the way you want to take it is that these are examples of good spots. And, once you've found you've got kind of a take on this area, there are literally thousands of miles of this, hundreds for sure, and possibly thousands of miles of these streams that now you know what to look for spot wise. Now you got it, but you're going to have to kind of find your own access points. He goes into a lot of general information about access points and water rights in Texas. My criticism, and this was shared by you, is that he kind of glosses over 2 of our favorite stream fish. He's not, he catches those spotted gar, but he's not gar crazy like you and me. And he likes those white bass okay, but he's not as excited as you and I get about the whites. And we were a little disappointed there.
Right. I mean, nobody can be perfect. Nobody can be.
No.
Nobody can be like, nobody can be in like, I definitely felt that maybe the white bass and especially the hybrids, he kind of mentions hybrids and then is like, okay, whatever. I mean, he does have a fair amount in that chapter about the San Gabriel about white bass fishing, but I really don't feel like he really gets into the level of detail that
he does for the Guadalupe bass, the perch. Yeah, he's not doing second riffle up and all that stuff. So okay. Now a couple things real quick because we got to keep this moving. I had a couple of bum out things about the book that had nothing to do with the writing, nothing to do with his approach, nothing to do with Aaron at all. But he talks about how this area has blossomed and how there's now all these fly shops, all this support for fly fishing, a lot of guys doing it. And you're a person that doesn't mind fishing around people as much as I do. But he also reminds us that there are literally hundreds of miles of these streams. So if you show up on one of his spots and there's already a couple guys there, the next one's not that far away, and you can kind of just move upstream away from them. That there's plenty of good fishing on these rivers. But the whole thing about the double-edged sword, more people mean more voice in conservation, and he is really big on conserving this area because it is under development assault, because all of a sudden everybody wants to live on the Edwards Plateau because it's one of the more climate hospitable regions of Texas. So in that sense, more people means more protection, more conservation. But his overall forecast for the area, because of this development, not because of the surge in fly fishing, but because of this development, the wineries, the sucking of the water to further this specialized agriculture, the future of these waters is in doubt. And that was kind of a bum out for me.
Yeah. And, there's always the looming specter of climate change too here. I mean, Texas could very well dry up. That's a real worry. Or just be subject to like drought, flood. And so, but yeah, definitely is the case. I mean, the explosion of Austin is like a place to be. I mean, it's kind of one of the places where everybody kind of lands on that, like, let's all move there,
right.
Like Portland, Oregon, or, whatever. It's, you get these places that are the hot place to go and everybody goes there, and it's because it's, it's like a little, it's a college town, right? That's what it started out as. I mean, it's a college town / the capital, but then these towns they just get discovered, and then boom, everything takes off. And to say that Austin's been discovered, I mean, it was discovered a long time ago, but it's certainly like one
down.
of them.
It ain't slowing down.
No, it's not slowing down any. If anything, it's speeding up. And,
right.
It's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. They really got to like get more. If you can get more people out on the water to become advocates of it, that's great. We want to do that. I mean, and so, if being like, in my opinion, like being overly specific about, he wants to get people out there and getting them catching fish right away.
Right away.
It's not like, okay, go out and pay your dues and then don't catch anything for a year. And then that's kind of the way it is when you first start trout fly fishing. You're like, well, you're not going to catch anything forever,
Right.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. You've got to suffer,
All right.
No.
All right. Yeah, I understand completely. Jeff, bottom line, because we've got to move on.
Yeah.
Recommend, don't recommend?
Oh, I'd highly recommend. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Highly recommend. Yeah. A great gift. And one last thing, don't matter if you're a fly fisher or not. You got a buddy that's heading down there, says, I got some business in Austin. I'd like to do a little fishing. And he's a ultralight spin fisher. You just tell him to get a fly bubble, get a box of jigs, get a box of inline spinners, and a box of flies in his bubble, and he can go down and have the same amount of fun as a fly fisher, maybe even more, hitting these streams.
Yep.
All right. What do you say we do some fish in the news?
Let's do fish. I love fish in the news.
Everybody loves fish in the news.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
All right. This first story, I'm springing it on you, Jeff, because the story that I had, the Mankato Free Press all of a sudden wanted major money, $2 to read it a second time. And I wasn't going to put our listeners through that. It was a cool story about a young man that won a big, huge online multi-species tournament that traveled all over the USA and caught over 100 species of fish and won the tournament. But you know what? I'm going to find this guy's name, and I'm going to get in touch with him, and hopefully we can just get him on the show and dispense with that article.
I can use my library magic to get us a copy of the article without having to pay for it. So, and you probably can too with your local library. So, just shout out to libraries.
Well, we cut this story from another podcast that I had it up. Clay said we were running out of time. We needed to move on, but Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks found an American eel in the call, which is exciting to me because that has not happened since 2015. And before that, it was sometime in the 90s. So they're not common in the call at all. I haven't seen one in the call for a decade. They caught one while they were doing an invasive species sampling. And I don't know, I just like this. I'm really stoked about it. Anyway, the link is in the show notes. And if you're into that stuff and you love eels, as I have learned to love eels from listening to the show, check it out. Check it out.
Yeah, I wish there was like enough eels around to like actually go out and catch them because they're very good to eat.
I've heard that. I've heard that they're excellent eating, and it's another thing that goes way on back there to the ancient days. And gosh, in the Chronicles of Narnia, Puddleglum, he likes to eat eels, and that's what he makes the kids for dinner one night. Interesting fish, beyond interesting, absolutely fascinating. Okay, now this next story is kind of one of mixed emotions. It's kind of silly. It's kind of sad. It's kind of fraught with political stuff. But man accused of cooking fish and fish heads on a barbecue grill he didn't own. He then turned around, allegedly threatening to kill the police officer who arrested him for trespassing. Ronald Walker, 56, was the subject of a suspicious person call in the 2100 block of Pine Street during the day of June 4th, according to a probable cause affidavit penned by Texarkana, Texas Police Department officer Jonathan Price. Price responded to the area and observed Walker standing in the middle of Pine Street speaking to someone who was driving a pickup truck. The truck's driver told Officer Price that he was the employer of a woman who called 911 after observing a man on her home security camera pull her grill from her backyard, put it in her driveway, light it up, and load it up with fish and fish heads. Walker, uncooperative from the start, was taken into custody initially for walking in the roadway, but also then added to the charges was trespassing. And down in Texas, it's kind of like Kansas City. Tampering with another person's grill is a crime.
Yeah,
right?
don't be messing with my grill.
Don't be messing with my grill. That's right. But anyway, it's kind of a humorous story. But of course, people with mental health challenges need help. And I support the police, especially when they handle as well as Officer Price did. He said, we're very familiar with Ronald. We know that his behavior is unpredictable. He does not have a favorable opinion towards law enforcement, but he doesn't seem to be harmful. But I wish Officer Price had a social worker or someone with some psychological training to help him out in this case. But the thing is that Walker did have a fillet knife on him, and so forth. So I'm glad things didn't get out of hand. But aside from all that stuff, I don't want to go down that road. Jeff, have you ever eaten fish heads?
I have, actually. When I was a little kid and I lived in Taiwan, like one of my favorite things to eat was fish head soup.
Fish head soup.
It is exactly what it says on the label. It is a soup made with fish heads, and I like to pop the eyeballs out of the fish heads and eat them. And you're talking about the toddler aged me. So I have eaten fish heads. Yes, I have. And I found them quite good. I have not had fish head soup in approximately 50 years. So I'm going to have to go make it and try it. But yes, this is a legendary story in the family that I like to eat fish head soup and pop the eyeballs out and eat the eyeballs. So you heard it here on the Fish Nerds.
We heard it here first. All right. Well, Clay's always bragging about eating the walleye cheeks. And we covered eating fish from head to tail in the last episode. So I am going to have to give this a go. I assume you just kind of scrape the meat off, and yeah, I've heard of people eat the eyes and so forth. Anyway, interesting stuff, interesting story. We wish Ronald Walker, we hope you get feeling better and get the help you need. We also commend Officer Price for his cool-headed action, and we apologize to the lady. You did the right thing. I'm glad the situation didn't escalate, but yeah, if somebody started, on my grill in my driveway, I would call the police too.
But you're hungry. You got some fish heads.
You got some,
and you don't have anywhere to cook them.
Yeah.
Modern problems require modern solutions. And I got to say, when I very first saw this story, I was like, oh, clearly this is a Florida man. But no, not Florida man, Texas man. So this is a prototypical Florida man headline. But it looks like Texas man may be filling in for Florida man a little bit on this one.
Absolutely. But speaking of Florida, our final story for tonight is a shark bit a Florida teenager on the leg during a lifeguard training camp, officials said. Attack occurred near the Ponce Inlet Lifeguard Tower shortly before noon in Volusia County Beach in Florida. The 14-year-old boy had been practicing water entries when he mistakenly landed right on top of a black-tip shark, and the thing whipped around and bit him. According to witnesses, the shark was a decent-sized one, 4 to 5 feet long. The injuries weren't considered life-threatening, but life-threatening. We've heard of life-threatening. That was a punk band, but the injuries were not life-threatening. He was taken by his parents to get some stitches, and he'll have a scar to talk about the rest of his life. But the deal is that shark attacks are up worldwide. Talk about climate change and the super hot summer we had last summer, and there's no surprise that sharks are moving in closer and are getting in people's way, or they're coming in contact with each other. Florida had Smyrna Beach had a 26-year-old man get bitten on the foot while floating in an inner tube. Another 20-year-old man a few days later was bitten while playing football in the water. And then there was a guy who landed a shark and was not careful about unhooking it. And this is the thing. You'll see these guys try to pick these sharks up by the tail. Maybe they think they're a snapping turtle. Well, sharks got enough body strength that he can just whip right around. And that's how you get these bicep bites.
Yeah.
And then there was a woman and 2 teenage girls that were all hurt in separate attacks. So Volusia County getting to be known as a bad place to go swimming, Jeff.
Yeah. And I just saw on the news today, I was out running around and saw news on somewhere. And there was a thing of a beach closure somewhere. And I believe it was Florida due to like just a high number of sightings of sharks. I mean, it was like there were so many they went in and shut the beach down. So it's popping off down there. It's like they're wild animals, and that's how they communicate that please don't bother me or get out of my space. And that it's unfortunate that it leaves people needing stitches and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, when you're in close proximity with a wild animal, and they can't talk, they can't tell you other than, hey, please leave me alone. You're in my spot. You're in my territory. That's what I would imagine almost all these bites are, hey, like literally, ow, you jumped on me. Please don't do that.
That one for sure. And a lot of it's curiosity. I can just see a bunch of young dudes playing football in the shallows, and they're running around, splashing around. Well, that kind of noise is going to attract any kind of predator fish.
Yeah.
And then they see these bare feet going up and down, and we've talked about this on Fish Nerds a lot. We have a lot of shark experts on this show, and they taking a little bite out of something is kind of how they get to know their world, just like a dog sniffing and licking. That's what a shark does. But anyway, let's get on out of this news, Jeff.
All righty.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Speaking of shark bites, I've got a couple old pieces that I cut out of a Luke Chamings interview that I thought we'd go ahead and use tonight. So let's first listen to Luke Chamings tell us about some shark attacks down in South Australia, in that he said this to me in February, which of course is South Australia's summertime while we're suffering through winter. So let's listen to Luke Chamings talk about some shark attacks and the creative ways the Australian wildlife people are using to tackle this problem. Luke. 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 Luke Chamings. All right, Luke, we are very close to running out of time. I'm going to give you the last part of this session because I'm almost speechless over here. I see the sun going down there in Australia. I can't see your handsome face anymore. You're slipping into darkness there, my brother. Take it away. Talk about whatever. Talk about whatever you want to talk about here for the last few minutes.
Okay, well, we're looking at acoustically or a satellite tagging sharks over 4 meters. Bit dark, this topic, I'm afraid. But I think the thinking is that the really big sharks are a little bit more of a resident type of animal, and they are reappearing or appearing along our coasts, and attacks are now getting a little frequent again. And the worst thing is that they're not finding anything. So these are big animals. So we're looking at putting some tagging on the sharks, perhaps a warning system when they're around, whatever. But it's just the age-old problem of shark versus man versus right to be in the water. It's their home, but we're 90% water. Surely we have a right to go into the water. It's just this to and froing again. But yeah, they're just so any tourists, please just be careful, swim between flags, go to populated beaches, and just go steady if you come down here, because it's a wild place.
Well,
So, yeah.
oh my God, it is a wild place, and don't, because you will. I mean, I'm actually talking to myself there. I will divert off into all the things that live there that are potentially dangerous. But are we talking great whites? Are we talking a variety of species? What are we talking here?
Anything over 4.1 meters. There was a proposal to put these satellite tagging things on them, and obviously when they get close to shore or whatever, I mean, we're talking, these are very big sharks. We're 25 foot, 5 meters, and which was all, once upon a time, jaws, 25 foot, whatever, but now, it's reasonably common. So and these things, when they do bite, attack, whatever, there is no coming back from it. There's been quite a few in the recent months, and some of them, they're not finding one skerrick of them. So, these are very, very big animals, and we have a right to know if they're lurking in the waters that we're paddling around in. So I don't think a tag is a problem. I would hate to see netting or targeted baits or anything for them. But I think a satellite tag is very reasonable. Some type of warning device, it's up to you. You want to stay out there? Well, good luck to you. If you don't, go in. Simple as that. So,
simple as that. And the side benefits of the tagging. The warning system is, of course, a direct benefit, obvious benefit, but I'm all for the tagging. We have had, as you know, I know you listen to the show, so you know how many shark experts we have on. We have Dr. David Schiffman and some other experts come on, and they talk about tagging and the art of tagging, and it's fascinating, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I follow several shark study feeds on Instagram, and I see their work and their actual affection for these animals. But I'm all for the tagging. It's a great way to we can warn the people, get off, stay in, but there are sharks in the area. On the other hand, all this data coming in about where they're going, what they're doing, and so on.
For a long time, it's like, oh my God, Bruce swam from Australia to the Cape of Great Horn in Africa, and then he swam back and Don't think those sharks are quite as old as these. These are massive.
Wow.
And I don't think they go anywhere because they're big, they're fat, they're lazy, and they've got fairly complacent about their place in the coastline because no one bothers them.
Right.
They just go up. People leave their boat out of gear, motor not running, anchor up, and leave their motor out of gear because the propeller just spins real gently in the water, and they swim up. They grab hold of that, and then they put the fear of Jesus in everyone in the boat because they're bigger than the boat.
Yeah,
some of them are wider than the boat is long. These are really big animals, and if it was a roaming lion, we would tag it. Or if it was a roaming bear, you would tag it. But because it's a shark, there's protection of sharks, and I'm all for that. And I am not saying in any way, shape or form, but at the end of the day, having a 5 meter ton shark that's already had a bit of a nibble and a chew and a bite and grab someone here, you know what I mean? And he's in the area. Yeah, right. He's got to be. he's got to be deterred or at least turned away to, something. You can't just let him come into, bloody Glenelg Beach or something like that on a summer's day. God.
Right.
But
right.
these things are huge. They're so big. It's just, it's hard to get your head around how big they are.
Well,
And they're not scared. They're not scared at all, and nor should they be. But I think, we just need to learn to know where they are, why they're there. I mean, it doesn't. These people, the shark cage people that attract them in, and we teaching them, are we teaching them the sharks the wrong thing there to be dragging them into the cages and sort of razzing them up? They reckon AC/DC music.
right.
And they use AC/DC music, and twin diesel Volvos apparently are another thing that brings them in. But AC/DC music played, and
That's
in
crazy.
they come.
All right, Jeff, what'd you think of that one?
Pretty good. Again, though, with the climate change, always kind of lurking in the background here, isn't it?
Well, it really is. And I think it's really creative to use this non-lethal approach that also aids research, that we're going to tag these things. And then when we get a radio signal, they're closing in on one of these populated beaches, we can give the people a warning. But the whole thing, I love what he talked about is we talk about the incredible distances some of these younger sharks will swim, all the way up to the, Cape Horn, Africa, and then all the way back to Australia. But that a lot of these sharks get really like bass, just like younger bass will sometimes act absolutely pelagic and just swim round and round the reservoirs and lakes. But boy, when they get fat and old, they like just kind of hang out. And a lot of these sharks are just kind of hanging out in the same area. So once they get them tagged, they can keep pretty close track of them.
Yeah, but and it's that's a very many of the other methods of trying to keep the sharks out were things like nets and stuff like that. Probably not great for the ecosystem to have a bunch of nets out in the water and stuff like that. So
right, there's all kinds of problems with seals and turtles and this and that, things that we're not trying to keep out, things we're not trying to control, but they end up running afoul of this stuff. Okay, I've been dying to do this. I've been trying to find an excuse to do this. I'm kind of glad this came along, but here's another little piece out of that interview with Luke that we did back in February. It's about a fish called a yella, or a yellow belly. And boy, Jeff, this fish sounds right up our alley.
Sure does. I mean, it really sounds like a sort of a white bass type fish almost. In that
well, white bass, the way it spawns, wiper in the size, crappie in the way it likes to hang out around brush piles, smallmouth, and then it can be aggressive and is an incredible fighter. It's known as a yellow belly, golden perch, or callop. Let's listen to Luke talk about it right now. So you got a fish called a yella, which looks really cool.
It's a golden perch. Don't put me on the spot for its biological. Macquarius.
I would never put you on the spot for that, Luke, because it don't even put me on the spot.
It's there, but it won't come out. It'll come to me later. But anyway, it's a golden perch. It can be called the yellow belly or golden perch in the eastern states, but down in South Australia, we do everything a little bit different down here. It's referred to as a callop, which is an indigenous name for them, which I only found out recently. And so either way, it's all the same fish. They're a large predator fish. They're a schooling fish. They're fairly tooled up. They don't have teeth as such, like the sort of suck induction feeder, not so much a ram feeder. So they sort of fly up to it and then down it goes. They've got that big. They're pretty tooled up when it comes to protection, though. They're quite spiny and they have some very, very substantial gill rakers, which, they do get quite a few fishermen with them. But I think for that reason, cod do eat them, but I don't think they're their number one. Why are you going to try and eat something so spiny and everything if you can eat bony brim that aren't, or carp or whatever? But no, they grow to quite a decent size too. You hear all sorts of reports of 12, 14 pound and stuff like this. So, God knows what they are like to pull in, because they're a very, very strong fish. very strong fish. Once again, got the huge rear back tail and tail fin and really strong sort of back muscle that leads to it and everything. They produce a good fillet, reputedly quite good eating off of the sandbars. In the eastern states, the inland people sort of will dedicate a week or two to fishing for them primarily and just sort of stock up the freezers with fillets and that. So they are very much a protein supply in some states, probably not so much here. I don't bother with them. When you got redfin by the billions, why would you bother? They don't grow overly long. They don't get much past 600 mil, so what's that, 2 feet? But they just get bulbous and almost grotesque. They grow this huge lump above their head, like a shoulder, and the bigger and more pronounced that is, the more, the more breeding and that they're doing and the more energy they're storing, et cetera, et cetera. So they're one of these fish that get to a certain age and they sort of change shape a bit. They produce this lump, a bit like snapper does, I suppose. They grow a certain weight and all of a sudden they start to produce this lump out their head.
Right.
And caliper a little bit the same. They, how all perch have that upsweep from their head,
Sure,
they have that.
Sunfish do it too.
Yeah, it becomes quite pronounced as they become breeding age and that. But they're very similar to your white perch.
Yeah,
they look a bit like that. But
exactly.
they're very they're pretty aggro. When they're on, they're really, really good fun to catch. They're very keen on lures of most descriptions. They love shrimp, worms. They're a great one for a moving bait. So a lot of the indigenous people fish with hand lines, well, the majority of them do, and they'll have one in each hand and they just keep them just so gently sort of playing both lines with their hands, and they just keep the bait just ever so moving in the water, and they do wonderful on them. But you see a lot of people jigging rattling shads and vibes and stuff, and they'll stick right in the really bushy, sticky snags that look like you're gonna get hooked up every time. But they get them. They get them.
Well, what Chalmers bait would I use for these?
I'm a great I'm lazy. So I use trolling lures, but I'll put cod lures on. Like I'll put 160 mil cod lure on and still catch lots of callop. They're not put off by lure size at all. And if you want to target them, well, you can just like Clay does. You can just downsize your lure, and then you'll sort of eliminate the other bigger fish. But they're a great fish because you can put big lures on and catch them as bycatch. And they'll still jump on the big lure all day, every day, when they're fired up. And then in amongst them, you might get yourself a lovely big cod in amongst it all. Big lures does open up your avenues a bit because there's a lot of little fish that attack big lures. There's not too many big fish that attack little lures religiously, So, but when the caliper on and schooled up, they'll jump on anything just about. They're pretty aggressive like that. They seem to like purple, they seem to like green, but they definitely seem to like purple. So it's like anything. When in the Murray, the river's not that clear of water. A metre would be fairly substantially clean water for us. But, but when they close right in on that lure and they're just about to bite it, I imagine they get an eye full of colour then. And, it seems to be, purple seems to be the go.
All right, now, I don't care, man. Either one of us wins the lottery. We're going down there, bro.
I got to get down there. I mean, I have family there. Why am I not there?
I don't know, but I think I could, make myself get through the gigantic plane ride over ocean. I think I could find the courage if there was a yellow belly waiting for me
right
on the end of that journey. All right, buddy, we've got big news here. We have got the winners of the Father's Day contest coming up right now. Are you ready, Jeff, for Rocky's Choice?
Rocky's Choice, Rocky the Rock Star.
Rocky the Rock Star. Here we go with Rocky's Choice. Hello, America. I am your announcer, Cheese McGillicuddy, and this is Rocky's Choice. This is the game show where America's favorite puppy dog, Rocky Joe, makes the decision for us. Tonight, Rocky will be deciding who won the Fish Nerds Father's Day contest. So sit back and get ready to join the fun with our host, John Crappie Hippie King, and his beautiful summer-attired Kathy. Let's have a big round of applause for America's favorite game show, Rocky's Choice. Thank you for that introduction, Cheese. Hey, everybody, my name is John King, also known as the Crappie Hippie, your tree-hugging redneck from eastern Kansas, and I am your host tonight on Rocky's Choice. Now, our dog, Rocky Joe, has been sequestered in a soundproof room where he cannot hear or see what we're doing out here in the studio. Rocky, how are you doing in there? Excellent. Okay. And with me is my beautiful assistant in a string bikini, the lovely Kathy. Kathy, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fabulous.
And explain to the listeners the rules for Rocky's Choice.
We've got 3 treats on the floor. The first treat is David, second is Greg, and the third is Brian. We will release Rocky from his soundproof room, and whichever treat he goes to first wins first place, second place, and third is third place.
Excellent, excellent, awesome. All right, if everybody's ready, then let's release Rocky Joe. Rocky's entered the studio. He's coming on to the treats, and he has picked Brian is the winner. Rocky has determined Greg is second.
Oh, and third is David. Woo!
Congratulations, everyone, for entering our Father's Day contest. We really appreciate it. Brian, Greg, and David, you are all winners tonight on Rocky's Choice. Brian, you have won $50 worth of glass water stuff. That is a t-shirt plus $25 worth of glass water lures and weights. Greg, you are second place, and that is $25 worth of glass water lures and weights. And David, third place, $10 worth of glass water merchandise. Thank you, everyone, for playing, and thank you to you, Rocky Joe. And thank you most to you, the listener. Congratulations to Brian, Greg, and David for winning the contest, and thanks to all who submitted to the Father's Day contest. Prizes awarded by Glasswater Angling. You can find them at glasswaterangling.com. Good night, America, from Rocky's Choice. This is your announcer, Cheese McGillicuddy, wishing you a great evening and an even better tomorrow. All right, congratulations to Brian, Greg, and David for being our contest winners. We sure appreciate you guys sending in your submissions, and this show does not work without listener participation, and you 3 guys are the best, and I am excited to get your prizes together. I will be sending you a communique, and you can tell me what you want, and I'll put it together and get it right on out to you. Jeff, you know what?
What?
These people have been listening to us talk about fishing and fishing stuff when they should have been on out fishing.
It could have been fishing.
Why don't you give us some thank yous, bro?
All right, so I'm going to thank Wally Pleasant for our theme song, Diana's Bath Salts for the Fish in the News. We got Tim Tacklebox Bete. How do we pronounce it?
Tim Tacklebox Bete for submitting those great stories.
Yeah, we got Aaron Reed and Imbrifex Books. We got Kathy King. We got our good buddy Rocky Joe, the Wonder Dog, and all those who participated in the Father's Day contest, especially you, the listener, for bringing your ears here and letting us fill it up with lots of fishy stuff.
And so until next time, follow the code of the fish nerds. Spawn early and often.
Never trust a free lunch with strings attached.
And swim against the current every chance you get.
Looks like we just made a podcast.
Woohoo!
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast. Just for the halibut. Fried in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish nerds. Fish nerds.